Nonprofit Radio coverage of 19NTC. You know what that is? It's the Nonprofit Technology Conference coming to you from the Convention Center in Portland, Oregon. This interview, like all our 19NTC interviews, is brought to you by our partners at Act Blue, free fundraising tools to help nonprofits make an impact. My guests now are Matt Scott, seated closest to me. He's CEO of Cosmic, and David DiParalisa, CEO of Give Lively. Welcome, Matt. Welcome, David.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Tony.
Pleasure to have you. And Matt Scott, welcome back to Nonprofit Radio.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
All right. Your topic here today is reducing donor abandonment, what to copy from e-retailers. David, why don't you get us started? Give us the headline and the lead.
Sure. So this session is intended to help nonprofits think about the full life cycle of the experience of making a donation and all of the elements that could result in someone dropping off from completing a donation. And we want to bring in expertise from the consumer world, the world that most everyone lives in, and apply it to this nonprofit space. Okay,
and just so in case there's any question, why don't you define abandonment for us?
So someone starts to donate to, or starts the intent, or has the intent to donate to your cause, and then leaves in the middle of it, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Matt, anything you want to add to the overview of our session?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we've had a lot of conversations, one of the things that I really enjoy about David's perspective is, we think about Amazon one-click checkout, right? We think about Netflix in terms of, the user experience that we're all used to. And I think that if we can copy some of those things and move them over to the nonprofit space, we're going to be ahead as an industry. But if we're thinking only about competing against other nonprofits from a donor experience, we're going to find ourselves in a lot of trouble. Because
you're setting the bar too low?
You're absolutely setting the bar too low, because we as consumers are also the people who are donating to charities, right? And if our expectation is for it to be a seamless process, to collect as little information as possible, to have unique, engaging content delivered to us, if we're not thinking like that as a nonprofit organization, we're missing out on consumer behavior.
Which are the e-retailers that you want us to learn from?
Really broad-based. So, we're inspired by Amazon, Zappos, to some degree, the experience at an Apple store, which, in a way is a kind of hybrid e-retail experience. And generally taking best practices from that space broadly, even if it isn't a specific e-retailer, it's some of the elements of what makes an e-retail experience common. For example, a simple donation, a simple checkout flow, a checkout flow that doesn't ask many questions but lets you get through it as fast as possible, a one-click checkout, a digital wallet capability. These are things that have worked for the for-profit sector, and the nonprofit sector is catching up, and we hope to help them get there.
Yeah, why? What's the problem? Why so slow? I mean, we're all experiencing these things on the e-commerce side. Why are we not recognizing that the analogy between our donors and ourselves as consumers? What's the disconnect?
I would say that there's an access issue. There's an access to technology that brings e-retail style practices to the nonprofit sector. I mean, Give Lively is a response to that problem, which is looking at the world of nonprofit tech and seeing that elements like digital wallets are not common. That's something that isn't available in a lot of other platforms, but that is available on the Give Lively platform. So it's those types of things that have kept nonprofits behind. I mean, unfortunately, platforms are not innovating as fast as they can, and they're not innovating with the consumer mindset that us and just a few other players are.
Okay. All right,
yeah,
Matt.
I sorry to add to that.
Okay.
One of the things that I think is really interesting, working with established nonprofits, you look at these behemoths, and they are their own worst enemy when it comes to technology. You look at the younger, more rapidly growing organizations, and those are the ones that are really out there, able to adopt new technologies quickly. They're not constrained by existing, say, CRM systems or their, existing, ways of doing things. And And when you take a tool like Give Lively and you put it out there and you integrate with a CRM like Salesforce, you unlock that potential. And I've seen it time and time again where established nonprofits in particular, they are their own biggest hurdle when it comes to getting in line with e-commerce best practice.
Yeah. All right. So why don't you kick us off, Matt? Let's get kicked off with what we should be learning. Where do we start?
Yeah, I mean, I think David brought up a lot of really good points in terms of Amazon, and you've got, a donor experience. But then what I'm really interested in, and I think where we complement one another, is on the content side. And so I like to always start with, who is your target audience? What is the unique user experience that person or persons wants to have with your brand? And how can you make sure from the moment that they interact with your brand and are brought to your page, to your checkout form, that they understand your unique market position? And so I think that's really important, to have a singular content strategy that's very user-focused. And if it's okay, handing it over to David, because I feel like that's where he picks up in terms of the e-commerce checkout process and where that's really critical in terms of the transition from content to checkout.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed, Matt, when we're on mic, you're more deferential than all the shit that you were giving me before I turned the mic on. Why don't we talk about monthly giving, for God's sake? But all of a sudden the mic goes on. He's like, if you don't mind, I'd like to pass it over to David.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
There can only be one New Yorker on this,
yeah,
and
but
I feel like you're dominating it.
Yeah,
right?
you have multiple.
Well, you're under. He's
talk about guest. I'm going to start as the guest personas.
Yeah,
I'm going to start creating guest personas.
Matt is surrounded by New Yorkers right now.
Yeah,
so
I feel like.
He's being into forced deference.
Yeah.
Submission.
Submission.
All right. Yes, I'll take your suggestion, Matt. Very politely requested. Careful. I just didn't want that mic to fall off the table.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So, David, go ahead. Share your expertise. You did tick off a bunch of things like wallet, one-click checkout, seamless. But we got a lot more time together. We got to go into some detail.
Yeah, and so at first I think it'd be helpful to acknowledge what Matt mentioned in terms of thinking about story.
The content.
Right, and the thing that keys in for me there is thinking about how the experience starts at the level of the ask and then the level of the intent of the donor. So to reduce abandonment, you want to get the right person to the checkout flow, right? So you want to start with the right people who respond to that message. And so, what Matt's doing at Cosmic is creating messages that resonate at a very granular level with different constituencies in such a way that when they get to the checkout flow, they finish the checkout, right? And I think that that thread is a thread that involves technology, because it's not only the channels in which that message is being sent, but then it's how that story is represented on the donation page and through the checkout flow and even after the checkout flow.
Okay, and we'll come back to that. I understand it's all a spectrum, a movement, a process. Matt, what are the how are we identifying the different constituencies for these granular messages?
Yeah, I know what you're getting at is like, what are the technical steps that need to be put in place? So let's just take acquisition as a great example, right? So you're going to post up a variety of ads, like paid, social, and if you set up separate landing pages with separate checkout forms, that's one way of identifying, this ad directly relates to this checkout page, and there's a continuum of content. Once you arrive there at that page, and they arrived from there because you've set up different ones, the content can then be dynamic, essentially, for that constituent. And that's where David talks a lot about stealing your thunder here. But you have that checkout form that's asking for as little information as possible. So capturing that email address and that zip code and getting right into the payment. And you're getting right down to the nitty-gritty. Then you're worrying about, okay, now that I've already got this information, what additional information do I need to provide? But I've already processed the donation.
That's right. Yeah, so it's thinking about what is germane to the donation experience as the only things that you should be asking a donor before the payment is actually made. You want to capture the dollars. So
is it fair to say, like, with as few distractions as possible? Like, there's no need to have an issue video or issue photos on your checkout page for a donation. The person is already moved by your issues. No,
Well, it
Or-
depends.
I don't-
There are different ways that can be implemented. One way would be to have a page that's both telling the story and allows you to make that seamless donation in the same view.
Okay.
And there are some that do the jump, right? So there's a storytelling page, and then you jump to a donation form that's on a different page. And I've seen it done both ways, and we see it work both ways.
I think it depends heavily, though, upon how they get there, right? Like, if they're coming if they're experiencing your brand for the first time, or they haven't, they need to be informed, right? And so another best practice is having call to actions throughout your page, right? So you're not just one. So you've got big, strong, powerful image or something that draws that user in from a content perspective, and a high CTA of donations. And I think
CTA, we got jargon jail on nonprofit radio.
Sorry.
As a previous guest,
Yeah,
I'm disappointed you didn't know that.
I'll lock myself away.
CTA is
Call to action, right?
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So
That's right.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, I think that's another best practice is the Give Lively donation checkout form can be embedded into your existing site. So you can have this microsite, like let's say take an Unbounce page, right? And you know that you've set up this unique page and you've got both the story there and the narrative there, and then you've got call to actions throughout the page. That's best practice because as they move down the content, there's lots of opportunities to make that contribution.
Okay. What's an unbounce page?
They're not paying me to talk about Unbounce. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
It's
I'm not paying
Hey,
you.
It's
I'm not
no
paying you
one's
anything.
paying anyone
yeah,
here.
fair. It's a tool.
If you keep this up, I'm shutting your mic off.
Fair. It's a landing page tool that is really easy to use in terms of setting up unique content, and then you can track that. Someone lands on that page, and you can track that they came into your database specific to that content.
Okay. So this is we're getting to our segmentation of constituencies.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So now let's go back to David. What more can you say about things you need to have in place?
Sure. So, one thing that let's start at the very kind of high level, which is that a donation form should work. If you're going to reduce abandonment of your donation form once someone's in it, it better work on a mobile device. Right? It's kind of a simple statement, but
We got to be past that by now. I mean, everything should be mobile.
But that's not the
optimized.
case. But that's not always the case. And there are still donation forms out there that are asking for, I like to joke, they're asking for everything but your blood type. It's an 80-step form that then at the end you have a credit card entry field, maybe there's an error in that process.
What
and you
kind
have
of
to
stuff?
go over.
What kind of stuff are they all asking? I mean, I don't
they're
study this.
So they're asking for, often we'll see full mailing address, even if that person is a digital savvy or digital only person.
Yeah.
They'll ask questions about perhaps how they got to or learned about the cause, which is a good question to ask, but maybe not before the dollar is captured,
Right.
and can be inferred by some of the tracking that's occurring that brought them to the page
Matt
in the
was
first
talking
place.
about, yes.
That's right.
Landing pages, etc. Okay.
There are, even in how the payment information is presented, is an element that can be very confusing. So for some donation forms, they make you type or choose whether it's a Visa card instead of just detecting.
Yeah,
that
why
it's
do they
Visa.
do that? I know. They
it's-
can tell by the first digit.
They can tell by the first few digits, first four digits.
Yeah, how come? And that's not unique to nonprofits.
No, that's.
there's e-commerce.
I mean, I'm just going to say that's laziness on behalf of those building those forms.
Okay.
Or that's lack of
They
capacity.
make you choose. Is it Diners Club or MasterCard or Visa or American Express?
It's laziness. I mean, it's
All
easy
right.
to detect,
Yeah.
and it should be present on every single
All right.
page.
This is interesting. All right. So
Yeah.
I don't know if listeners are interested, but I am. No.
Well, but it's
I'm
they
channeling my
there
listeners.
there's data
What?
that shows that
Yeah.
every HubSpot ran a study and showed that when you increase the amount of fields that you ask a person to complete, you end up over about 2 to 3 fields total, you get a 50% drop off.
Oh man,
So
is that high?
It's that high. So
And then once you get to 8, which is many of what he was talking about, right? You're down to it's well under single digits of conversion rate, which
Oh,
is
my.
dismal if you think about like you have a really strong content
Yeah,
strategy.
and the person was into it.
Exactly,
they made their
yeah.
way to your donation.
they
But
were
you've
into it
made
until
it-
you ask them for their blood
Yeah.
type.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also will say one of my pet peeves that nonprofits continuously ask people for the same information over and over and over and over again, right? So you know who this constituent is. You've sent them this email communication. You already know who they are. They're in your database. And you ask them to re-identify all that information again for what? Like, why? When you go to Netflix and you have your subscription to Netflix, they're not asking you. Or if you're in Dollar Shave Club and you decide to get shaving cream on top of your razor, no one's asking you, by the way, could you tell us, like, what your
who
gender
you are
is?
again?
Yeah, like,
Right.
we know.
Okay. Save it
Yeah.
and stop asking for repetition. All right.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
consolidate.
David. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
consolidate fields as much as possible. Don't ask for the same
So,
information twice.
What's essential? I mean, all right. So I'm thinking of the quintessential, the Amazon checkout. It's been so long since I did my first Amazon purchase. Like everybody else, I obviously can't remember that. But what's actually essential?
So, I mean, in my view and the view that informed the Give Lively donation platform when we first launched it, it was nothing more than identifying information about that donor, first name, last. Actually, in the very early days, not even first name and last name, email address, payment information. That was it. Now there's a little bit more in terms of full name, just enough to make sure that we're doing receipting the right way and all of the tax deductible benefits.
By the way, payment information, that includes the billing address? You have to have the billing address?
Does not include. Okay, so let's get really specific. So it is literally first name, last name, email address, and credit card information, meaning nothing more than the number, the expiration date, and the CVC code.
So you can process a donation without
billing,
the billing
address. That's not required.
Okay.
That's right.
And one of our favorite partners at Cosmic is another organization called Touchpoints, which is an amazing. You give them just two little tidbits of information, like about Tony. We'd find out what kind of bagel he eats, on Wednesday, because they can pull back all that information for only 30 cents per constituent and give you everything about them, what property they own, what nonprofits they give to, their address, everything. And so that's one of the reasons why we like the Give Lively platform is you can take as little information as possible, get that donation, and then just pay 30 cents. Because if you have drop-off that goes, down 50% when you've asked more than 3 questions, why not ask just as few questions as possible and go pay 30 cents for that information somewhere else?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can, and that's getting into very sophisticated strategies in terms of augmenting data. Instead of asking for things up front, find other ways to get at it. There are social networks that have advertising networks that have ways to link, for example, email addresses back to social, so that you don't necessarily need to ask them. So then you learn more about that donor through those networks.
Through your own work, rather than asking and risking the abandonment.
That's right.
Okay. And just the frustration, too, of it. Okay. Let's see. Go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, I think David should speak a little bit about, the digital wallets. And that is absolutely game-changing when it comes to best practice. So take it from here.
Yeah, thanks. So and
I want to welcome you to Matt Scott Nonprofit Radio.
Yeah, thank you.
It's the longest running podcast and most listened to podcast.
It's also
for
incredibly
nonprofits.
deferential and generous.
Well, when the mic is on,
The B cut will. It's
good to have Tony back on the show. I just would like to.
So we, here at Give Lively. So there's another session actually that I'm leading called Digital Wallets So Hot Right Now. And in that session, we'll talk about digital wallets, the concept. I mean, the digital wallets have been around for a long time, but examples of them are PayPal, Apple Pay, Google Pay. These are one-click payment options that have in them a variety of security protections and data that gets easily shared without having to ask that donor to enter it
again.
again.
We were just talking about, yes.
Right, so there's no entry. You've entered a credit card once, you've entered your address once, and you're just using it over and over again in this example, a donation form. And they're incredibly powerful, and they are. And people use them. The level of penetration of mobile wallets is increasing, and it's increasing at all age groups, but particularly with younger folks.
But in nonprofits,
Well, very few have
I don't
ever
see it.
had
I don't
access
see
to it. So our platform has digital wallets, so you'll see it in, for example, if you go to malala.org, that's one of our partners, right on their homepage, you'll see if you have a wallet, an Apple Pay or Google Pay browser that you're on, you'll see those buttons right there, and you can make that donation very quickly. If you're on your phone, you'll see it there. But most other platforms are not offering that service, or they're just now offering that service. But this is a service that we're used to, right? So think about buying a cup of coffee on using Square and tapping with Apple Pay. I mean, you're not.
I also think
swiping.
it would be troubling if we didn't at least mention this best practice from e-commerce, which is the classic upsell, right? So I think one of the areas that I've seen the wallet work so well is when you've got a recurring donor, right? You've got this person who's a member of your tribe, right? And one of our client, Team Rubicon stands out, or Mercy Corps stands out, where you have these sustaining donors who give monthly, right? Then you have this urgent appeal that comes up. And because you have a really robust content strategy and you're quantifying the impact of their recurring gift, you send them a text message that is as simple as them putting their thumbprint on to authorize an additional one-time contribution for a wildfire in, Northern California or whatever. It is incredibly effective for upselling for those who are on a subscription model, as well as, you attend an event or whatever. It's an easy way to take that best practice from e-commerce, which is your existing customers are your best potential, customers for an additional service.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, and those buttons should be front and center. So, an effective donation form to reduce abandonment shows you easy ways to pay up front and suggests the best way to pay right on that first screen. So, looking at a donation form that works well is one that may say, you're making a $25 donation monthly, tap this one button and you're done. You've not even moved beyond that first page. You've really not even asked any additional questions of the user because the answers are embedded inside of the digital wallet payment. So very low friction, easy to make donations, much more secure.
One of the objections I've heard from around streamlining, like we're talking about, is the preservation of credit card information, because then you're implicated with PCL.
PCI compliance.
PCI, exactly. Thank
Yeah.
you. So
Is that an acronym, Fel?
no, not when I do it.
Okay.
No.
Thank you. Just wanted to
It's personal credit information. Watch it. Your mic is going down. It's already been slowed down. You hear yourself, but no one else will.
Yeah. I notice you're only asking David questions now.
Yeah, you notice Matt only gets to speak when he says, "Can I say something?" What I should mention here is, because Tony's not going to ask me. All right, so now you're implicating PCI compliance requirements. But if you're accepting, you use digital wallets, you're not personally, the organization is not preserving the information, right? It's the I don't know what it's called, the host of the wallet.
Yeah, exactly.
So the organization,
the payment processor,
the payment processor.
The payment
so
processor,
the nonprofit doesn't have to save the.
Yeah, I mean, I hope,
information.
and I hope no one listening to this who is working for a nonprofit is ever dealing directly with PCI compliance. Like, they should be using a vendor who is shielding them from that level of risk, because that's incredibly risky and a lot of bureaucratic burden in order to get PCI compliant. So the payment processors under the Give Lively platform are Stripe and PayPal. Those are both PCI compliant providers. In all cases, a platform like Give Lively never has access to a person's donor or credit card information directly. And through a wallet, what's really smart about wallets is how they hide they create one-time use credit card numbers, essentially. That's an easy way to think about it. One-time use numbers that are used every time you make a purchase. So there's no, one number goes down or gets used inappropriately, and it's not affecting any other element of your credit history. So it's secure and hidden from both the payment provider themselves as well as the platform provider, and certainly the nonprofit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Matt, I'm going to give you a break, actually, and 'cause I feel bad. I don't really feel bad, but I'll say I feel bad. about the way I've treated you. So I'm going to give you the wrap up because we just have like 20 or 30 seconds or so. So I'll let you close.
How generous. How
yes,
generous.
Cosmic from Cosmic.
Yeah. Thank you. I would say for any nonprofit organization who's out there, think about to yourself, what is the experience that you... Did you really just turn...
No.
Oh, okay.
You're so paranoid.
All right.
Don't take me at my word.
Fair. I guess think about the experience that you have with the brands that you love and think about how you feel when you're asked lots of questions that are unnecessary and try and channel that when you're setting up your donation form or when you're selecting your vendor to work with to process your donations because that's the standard. The standard is not other nonprofits. The standard is not your system that you've been using for 3 decades and it works because it's what we always used. The standard is how we interact with brands on a daily basis and how we spend our money on a daily basis, and it's really important to think about that.
Those brands have raised the bar. Your donors are experiencing that high level of purchase flow.
Of ease.
Ease, right? Thank you. And they're coming to expect it from you.
That's right. Yeah.
Lest they abandon the process.
That's right. And in Give Lively's case, just to plug us for a second, and we don't charge money for access to our platform. So we're enabling nonprofits to use digital wallet type technology and have that access and not have to pay for it. And I think that's something unique, and I hope people take advantage of that.
All right. That was shameless self-promotion,
Yep.
but I'll allow it. It's fine.
Well, we're doing something good.
I feel like I'm with two smart
promoters.
Cookies.
Permit me to say young CEOs. Yeah.
Thank you.
At 56, I can say that. All right. And they are Matt Scott, CEO of Cosmic, and David D. Paralisa, CEO of Give Lively. And this is Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio coverage of 19NTC, the Nonprofit Technology Conference. This interview, like all our 19NTC interviews, brought to you by our partners at Act Blue, free fundraising tools to help nonprofits make an impact. Thanks so much for being with us.